Unveiling the Truth in Judge Judy Movie Analysis 2025. The Allure of Failed Romance Trials. Welcome viewers to Judge Judy Movie Analysis 2025. If you think love is free, prepare for a severe electric shock from today's courtroom session. Episode 13644. One of the season's most astonishing cases is not just a platform for petty breakups, but a treasury of critical legal and psychological lessons. We will dissect three bitter romantic sagas where romance gave way to unpaid bills, reclaimed gifts, and unwritten promises. Get ready to follow every detail, because in this courtroom, every minor detail has a price, and that is precisely the core attraction of Judge Judy's relentless pursuit of justice. Part 1. The Rental Agreement Nightmare and the Pawn Stereo. Karen Acri vs. Donald Jones. 1. The start of the rental battle. The trial opens with the lawsuit between Karen Acri, a 28-year-old woman, and her ex-boyfriend, Donald Jones. Karen is demanding rent and utility bills. Donald not only countersues, but also demands rent, lost wages, and a loan to redeem her pawn stereo system. Just hearing this, it is clearly a massive tangle of financial collapse layered upon a broken relationship. Judge Judy immediately gets to the heart of the matter, confirming that Karen Acri and Donald Jones lived together and co-signed the lease agreement. This detail is crucial because it defines the joint legal responsibility of both parties toward the shared property. The act of both signing the lease demonstrates a commitment to joint liability, a binding commitment that cannot be unilaterally denied, even if the personal relationship has ended. 2. The air conditioning flashpoint and the hasty exit. Karen Acri explains the reason that led to her departure. The problem originated with a malfunction in the air conditioner. She states that after that incident, she was asked to move out, but Donald Jones continued to stay in the apartment. This event occurred in the middle of the month, specifically on August 15th. She had paid her share of the rent for that half of August. This presents an important point for analysis. Karen fulfilled her financial obligation up until the point she officially left, demonstrating an intent to adhere to the contract, at least from her perspective. On August 29th, Karen returned to collect the belongings she had left behind. What she discovered was that the apartment was empty. This detail points to a secret, irresponsible departure on the part of Donald Jones. This action was not only disrespectful to Karen, but could also constitute a breach of the lease agreement. The silence and the abandonment of the apartment without notice are clear signs of a lack of good faith in resolving the consequences. 3. Donald Jones's weak counter-argument. Donald Jones steps up, and the story immediately runs into contradictions. He claims that Karen Acri never paid the rent for August. This is a blatant falsehood, as Karen had proof. Judge Judy, with her keen experience, does not let this pass. She demands to see the proof of payment. Karen presents the receipt. This small detail about the receipt is the key that unlocks the door to the truth, causing Donald Jones's narrative to crumble from the start. Faced with undeniable evidence, Donald Jones is forced to admit that he stayed in the apartment until August 29th, the day Karen discovered the apartment was empty. This reinforces Karen's argument. She paid her portion, and Donald Jones occupied the entire space for almost the entire remaining month. 4. Analysis of the absurdity in the counterclaim and property damage. Donald Jones continues by demanding rent from Karen Acri, an action that is completely illogical. Judge Judy quickly grasps the absurdity of this. How can a person who stayed longer demand money from a person who left and paid for their time? Then, Donald Jones makes a shocking admission. He confesses to destroying some of Karen's personal property and throwing it away. But he quickly minimizes the severity, saying they were just small items. This detail is not only an acknowledgement of guilt, but also a deep look into his anger and lack of control after the relationship ended. Destroying property, a serious legal offense that cannot be minimized by saying they were just small items. 5. The stereo case and the vague oral contract. The next highlight is the demand to reclaim $300, a sum Donald Jones claims he loaned Karen Acri to retrieve her pawn stereo system. Judge Judy, adhering to the principle show me the money, immediately asks for a receipt or a loan agreement. Donald Jones confesses that he has no documentation whatsoever. Karen Acri initially denied the loan entirely, but then changed her story, stating it was a gift. The contradiction in Karen Acri's testimony suggests a hidden truth, or at least a legal ambiguity surrounding the original agreement. Her changing her story from no such thing to it was a gift makes her credibility waver. However, Judge Judy makes a definitive ruling. If there is no written proof, it is not a legally recognized loan. The demand to reclaim the money for the stereo is dismissed. 6. The demand for lost wages and the failure of promises. Donald Jones continues with another counterclaim, demanding lost wages for helping Karen Acree's father move a large refrigerator. This is a classic example of attempting to turn voluntary assistance within a relationship into a financial obligation after a breakup. Judge Judy dismisses this demand immediately, as it was a vague oral contract, lacking the nature of a business transaction, and without evidence of a specific fee agreement. Finally, Donald Jones makes a demand for compensation for personal property he alleges Karen Acree destroyed. Judge Judy asks for evidence, photos of the damaged property, bills, or anything. Donald Jones again confesses, "I have no proof." This puts an end to all of his counterclaims. 7. The final verdict and the lesson in accounting. Judge Judy focuses on the two remaining issues, rent and utility bills. She determines that Donald Jones stayed longer and must be responsible for the utility costs, $100. After considering the complexity of the rent payments and the time spent there, Judge Judy rules that Donald Jones must pay Karen Acree the sum of $500. This decision is a fair calculation for Donald Jones's occupancy of the apartment and a refund of a portion of the rent Karen Acree paid. Judge Judy concludes the case with profound comments on the immaturity and reckless actions of young couples during a breakup. She emphasizes that ending a relationship is not an excuse to destroy property or avoid joint financial responsibility. The lesson here is, always have written proof, and never let emotion override logic in financial transactions. Part 2. The $5,000 gift and the stuck cat, Gail Abel vs. Tim Lemke. 1. Love, money, and the vague investment. The second case brings us Gail Abel, a sales associate, suing her ex-boyfriend Tim Lemke, an account manager. Gail Abel demands the return of money she invested in his house and the return of her pet cat. This story is a testament to the risk of integrating finances too soon in an ambiguous relationship. Gail Abel and Tim Lemke dated for a year and a half, and she moved in. She claims to have contributed $5,000 towards home repairs, specifically building an outdoor wooden deck. She calls this an investment. This is an incorrect legal term. When a person puts money into someone else's property without a written agreement for repayment or ownership, the money is legally presumed to be a gift. 2. The argument about the gift and the lack of documentation. Tim Lemke, with the cool demeanor of an account manager, counter-argues that it was a gift. He suggests that Gail Abel living with him without having to pay rent was already compensation. Gail Abel tries to explain that her intention was to help him save rent money to pay off his debt. Judge Judy immediately sums up the legal nature of the problem. She emphasizes that money spent on property not owned by oneself without a written commitment is a gift. She asks Gail Abel if she has any documentation proving this was a loan or a formal investment, and the answer is no. The analysis here shows a painful truth. Gail Abel placed absolute trust in the relationship, viewing her contribution as an investment in a shared future. Conversely, Tim Lemke viewed it entirely from a legal and financial perspective, taking advantage of her lack of written documentation. Gail Abel's demand for the money back is dismissed. 3. The battle for Sandy the cat. After failing to get her money back, Gail Abel turns to demanding the return of the cat named Sandy. She insists she was the one who bought the cat. Tim Lemke objects, saying Gail Abel was an unstable cat mother and had repeatedly left Sandy with friends for care. He argues the cat belongs to him. Judge Judy poses the pivotal question, did you give the cat to Tim Lemke for his birthday or any other occasion? Initially, Gail Abel tries to evade the answer, but then, the truth is revealed. She gave Sandy to Tim Lemke as a birthday gift. This detail completely changes the situation. The law is very clear about gifts. Once given, ownership is transferred. No matter how deep Gail Abel's affection for Sandy might be, the act of gifting turns Sandy into Tim Lemke's legal property. 4. The verdict and the bitter reprimand. Judge Judy's verdict is quick. The demands for money and the cat are both dismissed. After the verdict, Judge Judy directs her final words toward Gail Abel. She reprimands her for investing too much in an uncommitted man, one who has a sense of entitlement. She warns the young woman that people like Tim Lemke will exploit her in one way or another for her entire life. This reprimand is not just a legal critique, but a deep life lesson about identifying and avoiding toxic relationships, where one party only knows how to receive without intending to give. Part 3. The car, the debt, and the father's lesson. Dennis and Dennis versus Aaron E.B. 1. Two plaintiffs and one annoying defendant. The final case brings a more complex scenario. Two plaintiffs, Emily Dennis and her father, Rodney Dennis, jointly suing Emily's ex-boyfriend, 22-year-old Aaron E.B., for rent, bills, and the value of a car. The father's involvement shows the seriousness of the issue, when an adult must intervene to protect his daughter from the consequences of a bad relationship. 2. The legal trap of the car. Rodney Dennis, the father, is the one suing for the return of the car. He claims he gave the car to Aaron E.B. so he could get to work. However, after the relationship ended, he wanted it back. Judge Judy delves into the legal details of the car. Who is the owner on paper? Rodney Dennis admits that the car registration is in Aaron E.B.'s name, but the certificate of title still belongs to him. This detail is the key that unlocks the legal victory for the father. Judge Judy argues that, legally, giving a car is a gift, and it usually cannot be reclaimed. However, she quickly declares that because the certificate of title still belongs to Rodney Dennis, he has the legal right to repossess the car. This is a legal technical victory for the father. Rodney Dennis, perhaps having foreseen this, acted cleverly by retaining the ultimate ownership on the paperwork, turning the gift into a conditional use agreement. 3. The $2,000 loan and the repeated naivety. It is Emily Dennis's turn to present her demand for $2,000 for rent and bills. She confirms that she moved out in January, but Aaron E.B. continued to stay. She had paid the rent for that January. Emily Dennis further confirms a surprising detail. She gave money to Aaron E.B. in November, and continued to give more money in January. Aaron E.B. claims this was a loan and he will pay it back. Emily Dennis, seemingly having learned the lesson, denies it was a loan, but provides no clear proof. Judge Judy, as she did in the previous case, raises the issue of the lack of written evidence. She questions Emily Dennis about why she continued to give money to her ex-boyfriend when they broke up and she had moved out. The repetition of this action, especially without a written commitment, reinforces the argument that these were gifts, or at least unconditional help during difficult times. 4. The cold verdict and the final warning. Judge Judy delivers the verdict. Emily Dennis's demand for the money back is dismissed. She concludes that Emily's actions were naive, careless, and had no legal basis for a claim. Finally, Judge Judy delivers a long and heavy lecture to Emily Dennis. She points out the danger of dating people with a sense of entitlement. She says that such people will only exploit her, and her continuous act of giving money without paperwork was foolish. She concludes that Emily must learn to be wiser, while her ex-boyfriend is still out there continuing to grow up irresponsibly, while she has had to mature. The difference between the two decisions, allowing the father to reclaim the car and dismissing the daughter's demand for money, is the legal highlight. One side relied on clear legal ownership car title to win, while the other failed due to lack of written evidence for the monetary transaction. This is an expensive and bitter lesson for Emily Dennis. Part 4. Prediction of the next developments. The personal viewpoint of the storyteller. As someone who has followed thousands of cases in Judge Judy's courtroom, I can offer a fairly confident prediction about what will happen next in the lives of the three plaintiffs who failed to reclaim their money and property. First is Karen Acri. Although she won the case and was awarded $500, I predict the relationship between her and Donald Jones will not end here. Donald Jones's anger, demonstrated by his destruction of property and his demand for absurd counterclaims, shows he is a resentful and irresponsible individual. It is highly likely he will be slow or deliberately try to evade paying this $500 debt. Karen will have to face a new battle to enforce the judgment, possibly involving garnishing Donald's wages or bank account, a costly and exhausting legal process. Her biggest lesson is that winning in court does not equate to the end of all troubles. Next is Gail Abel in the case of Sandy the cat. She seems to be the most deeply hurt, not only by the loss of money, but also by the loss of the pet she loved. With Judge Judy having labeled Tim Lemke a person with a sense of entitlement, I predict Tim Lemke will continue to keep Sandy the cat and treat it like a prize, without any remorse. Gail Abel will have to learn to accept that the cat now belongs to Tim. Though heartbreaking, this is a lesson that helps her recognize the value of self-respect and the need not to trade financial and emotional stability for superficial relationships. I hope she applies Judge Judy's advice to stay away from people like Tim Lemke in the future. Finally, Emily Dennis and her father, Rodney Dennis. Although Rodney Dennis successfully reclaimed the car thanks to his legal prudence, Emily is left empty-handed with her $2,000. My prediction is that it will take Emily a long time to digest this lesson. She repeated the mistake twice by giving money to Aaron E.B. without paperwork, and the failure in court is a harsh wake-up call. Aaron E.B., who has been described as a baby with an exploitative nature, will continue to live off the help of others without facing consequences. Emily needs to completely cut off all contact, no matter how painful, to prevent any future exploitation. Her biggest lesson is to learn to say nitrogen monoxide and prioritize herself. Conclusion and community prompt. Judge Judy episode 13,644, a sharp portrait of the financial and emotional failures that arise from romantic relationships without clear boundaries. Whether it is a $5,000 investment in someone else's house or $2,000 for an unemployed ex-boyfriend, the common thread among the losing plaintiffs is the lack of documentation. Judge Judy has taught us an eternal lesson. In matters of the heart, use your heart, but in matters of money, always use paperwork. This story is not just about debt collection or repayment, but about learning to protect oneself from people with a sense of entitlement and from one's own immaturity. Judge Judy's decisions, though sometimes appearing cold, are always based on fundamental legal principles. No evidence, no case. I want to hear your opinion. If you were in their shoes, what would you do to avoid the mistakes of Corinne Ackery, Gail Abel, and Emily Dennis? Is keeping the car title the only way to protect assets in a relationship? Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Judge Judy Movie Analysis 2025 so you don't miss any in-depth analysis of these dramatic legal and life cases. See you at the next trial.